There'll be more seconds, I suppose so. Well, it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting of Milton Plan Commission for December 14th, 2021 to order. And Abbey, the first item is the roll call.
Erdman Hermans,
Here.
Paulson,
Here.
Ramsey,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Slavish,
Here.
Bruce,
Here.
and Brar is present. And just a quick note that Bruce will be abstaining from items 6, 7, and 8 this evening.
Okay, all right. Okay, so the first item is the public hearing, and Abbey, you want to say a few things to begin with?
Yeah, this is a request for a zoning amendment, a GIP amendment for the Tribeca project. And the intent of the rezoning is to help with handling stormwater runoff that is not associated with the Tribeca development, but is runoff that's coming from lands that are on the other side of the Beltline. It's about 44 acres of land that is being managed with this new stormwater pond. And I just want to note that this is a city partnership with the developer. So this is very much something that the city has encouraged as a solution and as an alternative to sending the stormwater to Graber Pond, which is managed by the city as a prairie pothole, or the intent of that is for it to be managed as a prairie pothole. So at this time, we can.
Do not know how to turn up the audio.
Mr. Lecter, we can hear you. Would you like for me to mute you? Okay. So that's all I have to say on that item.
Okay, so it's open, and Susan West, your hand up.
Yes, I'm, for the people that don't know me, I'm Susan West. I'm the alder for District 6. Pardon? And I would like to ask the Plan Commission to approve this GIP amendment. I also serve on the Stormwater Utility Board, and this would be very beneficial to Graber Pond and then even Pheasant Branch Conservancy in terms of controlling the water, especially in terms of floods, because Graber Pond, during the 2018 flood, there were numerous houses that had water entering in them and were damaged. So anything that we can do to minimize the amount of water going into Graber Pond would be very, very helpful. I would also like to just commend the developer for being willing to do this. I think this is a great partnership. So please vote for this GIP amendment. Thank you.
Great job, Susan. So this is a good addition to your district, and that's a great start. Wonderful. Anyone else who want to speak at this time? I don't see any raised hands. Is there anyone else who want to speak at this time? Okay. If there's no one else, one more time, is there anyone else on the telephone or on the Zoom who wants to speak at this time? Okay, I'm going to close that part of the public hearing, and we go to the approval of the minutes. Need a motion to approve.
Schaefer approves, moves.
Okay, need a second. Okay, I'm going to second it. So any question, comments, or changes? Okay, all those in favor of the approving the Plan Commission minutes for November 23rd, 2021, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 1, which we just had a public hearing for. This is GIP amendment on Tribeca Village to allow stormwater pond and parking lot lands north of 3440 Tribeca Drive and west of the Tribeca Drive. So I want to make clear, we all know that we are only approving the stormwater pond and nothing related to the parking lot. And we had to have a hearing just because that's how it was advertised. And this item is here put the same way just because of that. So, but this will be only for the stormwater pond. Okay, Abby, do you want to say anything?
I don't have any additional comments, but Mr. Bradley Hutter from MIG Commercial Real Estate had raised his hand and he is the applicant.
Okay, go ahead, Brad.
Oh,
I
I,
don't see, okay,
thank you, Abby. I actually was just going to commend Abby for her introduction and she said it better than I possibly could. And I wanted to thank Susan for her comments as well. And I feel the same way. I think the city has worked together with us on this unexpected issue we had about significant acreage of water coming out of the Beltline. And I think we found this is a great example of public-private partnership working together and using the facilities available within a TID district to accomplish something that's really environmentally advantageous for the entire city and as well as for future development in the city of Middleton and at Tribeca. So I think it's a win-win-win for everyone, and I'm available to answer any additional questions as you go forward. But I wanted to thank the previous speakers for their comments and Abby for your work on this to date. It's been I think as we go forward, it's going to be a great roadmap for being able to work together on things like this. As with global warming and climate change, this unfortunately is something where everyone's going to have to kind of chip in and deal with together going forward on a lot of projects in the future in the city.
the great way to go, Brad. Okay, need a motion to approve.
Schaefer makes a motion.
Okay.
I'll
so we'll
second.
go-
This is
okay,
Paulson.
Second by Kurt Paulson. So any questions or comments? I think this is, as everybody has said, is a good situation, so. Okay, I don't see any raised hands. If there are no questions or comments, all those in favor of approving the GIP amendment.
And
and
just to
send it
be clear,
Common
it's-
Council, contingent on resolution of
Resolution, engineering staff comments.
recommendations, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion does include the engineering staff recommendations. Okay, all right. So now we are to item number 2. This is the,
Thank you, everyone.
yes, Brad, have a great evening. That
You
was a
too.
quick-
Happy
that was a-
holidays.
That was a quick meeting for you. Okay.
Get to go. Lucky you.
Passive implementation plan modification for comprehensive sign plan, Morgan Stanley 8215 Greenway Boulevard. Daphne or Abby?
Yes, Mayor, I can take this. So this is for Morgan Stanley. As I mentioned in the staff comments, last year, Plan Commission approved the moving of Greenway Family Dental to the first floor of this building. Originally, they had signage marked up here in their comprehensive sign plan. And then now Morgan Stanley would like to put that signage space back up there. And basically they have a pretty understated design, pretty simple. And it is a little bit smaller because they know that there is this secondary sign on the first floor. So we recommended approval with the limitation that, this is the last addition that they can add, if Morgan Stanley or Greenway Family Dental were to move out. Basically that 185 square foot signage space is all that they're allowed on this north elevation.
Okay, any questions for Daphne? Any questions for Daphne? Okay, otherwise I need a motion to approve and that will be, anyway, so the recommendation is listed over here. Approval of the modification of the CSP for the additional signage due to the minimized size and understated design of the sign with the limitation that this will be the last modification allowed for the north side of this building.
Ramsey will move approval.
Okay. I will-
Slavish, second.
Okay, okay, motion by Ramsey and second by Slavish. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item number 3. Specific implementation plan modification for sign design review, the Lee Grand Group 1814 Parliamentary Street. Daphne.
Yes, so this is a new sign. It's taking over the place of cloth and metal.
that's currently at Milton Center Phase 1. Their sign is slightly bigger, and then they're adding a flag sign. So that's why we brought it to Plan Commission for a modification.
Okay, any questions for Daphne? It seems fairly simple. They are placing one and putting the other one. Yes, John, go ahead.
John,
You have to
you're muted.
unmute yourself, John. John, go ahead.
And not
Okay,
only
go
have
ahead.
no problems with the sign, but I go by this every day. And it's not clear at all if that's a place where you can go in, like a store. And so I think even looking at the design, at least makes it clear that this little cubby hole actually has a presence and some value. And so, trying to equate the square footage of the frontage with the sign doesn't make sense here. And I'm totally in support of this.
Okay, so you're making that motion then?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, okay, I will go ahead and second it. Any further questions or comments? Okay, so I don't see any raised hands. All those in favor of the motion to approve SIP modification for sign design review for the LeGrand Group 1814 Parliamentary Street, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we are on to item number 4. Specific implementation plan modification for sign design review. This is Factory Motor Parts 8459 Murphy Drive. This is Daphne again. Daphne, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so this one's pretty simple. It's just a new sign that's going on this building. About, I believe, 50 square feet, which is the allotted size that is allowed for this space.
Okay, any questions for Daphne or any comments? Otherwise, need a motion to approve?
Schaefer moves.
Okay,
Bruce seconds.
No, go ahead, Bruce.
okay, second by
Bruce.
Bruce. Okay, any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion for the special implementation plan modification for sign design review for the factory motor parts at 8459 Murphy Drive, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item number 5. This is the extraterritorial certified survey map, west side of the Pheasant Branch Road between Whistler Road and the Balzer Road in the town of Springfield. Mark?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. So this is, as you noted, in the town of Springfield, located just north of the city limits. There are 2 existing single-family residences and 1 proposed, which is to the south. And this CSM establishes new boundaries for the 2 slightly enlarged boundaries for the 2 existing properties, and then the new property would be created as well. So there you see the outline of the 3 lots. And so we are recommending approval contingent on resolution of engineering staff recommendations.
Okay.
The rest of the property to the west is the former Edwin Acre property, and that is being sold to a developer.
Okay.
Mark,
Any-
can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
What is the Springfield, they're under county zoning right now, or are they under
Yes.
their own zoning?
They are working, they are part of the, I don't think they've opted out of county zoning. So we let them know about this. We
So-
made sure they were aware of this.
And this meets the lot size definition in the zoning?
I have no concern about that, right?
Okay. That's it.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, need a motion to approve.
I would move to approve.
Approval contingent
second.
on resolution.
Okay, so the motion by Dan Ramsey, right? Was it Dan Ramsey? Okay, and second by Kurt Paulson. Okay, this is, the approval is contingent on resolution of engineering staff recommendations. Any further questions or comments now? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve extraterritorial certified survey map for the west side of Pheasant Branch Road between Whistler Road and Balzer Road in the town of Springfield, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 6. Planned Development District, Special Implementation Plan, Multi-Family Development on the vacant Captain Bill's site, T5 Real Estate Solutions, 6100 Lake Street. Abbey?
Yes, I think everyone's familiar with the Captain Bill's project. This is the second step in the zoning request, the specific implementation plan. And then the submittal that's included in your packet is identical to the one that was submitted to the Plan Commission previously. The Plan Commission recommendation at that time was to defer action, to wait until we received the results of the traffic impact analysis. And now we have those TIA results, and they didn't recommend any improvements that were attributable to this project. They did note that there were existing deficiencies on the roadway, but nothing that was attributable to the Captain Bill's project. And so our staff has put this back on the agenda with a recommendation for approval of the SIP contingent on resolution of engineering staff comments. The applicant, Tim Carey, I believe is here. I know he was double booked in meetings tonight, so
I'm Abby.
he's here. Yeah, and he can answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions or comments? Is that Lisa Carey or I'm just kidding. So Tim Carey. Okay, any questions or comments now? Okay, well, then need a motion to approve. I guess we have talked about it many times. So it's about time. So
Move to recommend approval of the SIP subject to resolution of engineering staff comments.
Clavish will second.
okay, any further question or comments at this time? Okay, all those in favor of the motion for approving the Planned Development District Specific Implementation Plan for Multifamily Development, which is on a vacant Captain Bill site, and it's going to be built by T5 Real Estate Solution, that's 6100 Lake Street, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Well, go ahead and do it, sir, now. So anyway, yes, have a great evening. So, all right, we are on to item number 7. This is the concept review for residential infill project 7107 University Avenue LLC, 7107-7109 University Avenue. Abbey.
Yes, this is a recommendation or a request for concept review. And just as a reminder to everyone, concept review is an optional step that a developer can take early in the process if they'd like to get feedback before going through the full architectural and engineered plan set. But this prospect would require an eventual application for rezoning. And if the city receives an application for a rezoning, we would then prepare a full staff report and a full review of the proposal. And we would also hold a public hearing and invite everyone who's interested in commenting on the project. At that time, we would make sure we got the word out to people who live close to the project, and we would also post a sign and publish a notification in the newspaper. But at this time, it's just simply concept review. The city did receive 2 comments. Both were from neighbors who lived just to the south of the property. And I forwarded those to the Plan Commission, but just to state it here, John Westbury at 7104 Elmwood and Michael Landgraf at 7028 Elmwood. Those were both sent out as part of the record for this project. This property within the newly approved comprehensive plan is within the future land use category of established neighborhood. And just to remind everyone, established neighborhood is defined as for already developed neighborhoods in the city, preservation of urban neighborhood scale and character, while providing a variety of housing options to meet the needs of a diverse population. Building types could include single-family dwellings, accessory dwelling units or ADUs, 2 to 3 family homes, and where appropriate, single-family attached townhomes, condos, and small-scale multifamily by conditional use. Our staff felt that the proposal as submitted clearly fits the definition of the established neighborhood category. The site currently contains 10 units. They're small studio units within one building and then a separate single family unit. So there are 11 units on the site now, which is zoned R2. And so R2 allows duplex units, and this property is grandfathered in. It's been there longer than a lot of other properties along the corridor. It was built in 1945, the 10 unit. I did want to note one thing just in terms of the parameter of the review that the city would have on this project. And that is that it is my opinion that the city would have no ability to require demolition of the current 10 unit on the site. And I just wanted to make that really clear because that was stated in at least one of the comments that the city received, unless there were a major health or safety concern that was identified through a building inspection process and would have to be documented over, a year or so. And I did reach out to our building inspector today, and he said that he has no documented and active concerns about this, this building that exists on the site currently. I also want to note that the applicant's interest is in improving the property. And so the 10 unit building would also receive some reinvestment through the proposal that is being brought forward to the city. I also just wanted to state that I think that it is in line with the city's goals to preserve and support the rehabilitation of the city's housing stock with what the property owner is trying to do and is proposing. Our staff would have major concerns if there was a discussion about displacing 10 units of naturally occurring affordable housing in the city without adequately replacing those units, especially given the tight housing market that we have right now with the 2.23% rental vacancy rate. I think what is being proposed here is a really clever way to add some really small scale infill to a site that provides missing middle housing now. I also like that there's a possibility that this could provide some more affordable owner occupied housing through the 0 lot line duplexes, because that's, I know, a goal of the city also, even if that is not immediately the intent. The builder would be incurring additional cost to create the duplex as 0 lot lines, which would enable the eventual sale of those units. And it also has the benefit of creating a street edge along University Avenue and improved aesthetics and reinvestment along the corridor. So in general, our planning staff supports the concept, but we of course need to go through the full process, and we are open to comments from the plan commissioners on this one. Also, the applicant, Roger Schink, is on the call and can address questions and may wish to make a presentation.
So Abby, I got a few questions to start with. So I was there this afternoon. I walked on Elmwood as well as on University Avenue, and went in the parking lots, and so I'm somewhat familiar. Well, I had been there earlier too. It does have 3 very big trees. One of them looks like oak. So I think, so my first question is that you already answered it. This is zoned R2 right now. And second, you said it's a grandfather that's built in 1945. There are things you can do and things you cannot do, right? So how about the noise and some of those complaints? Is that's not considered as a reason for any? It has to be health and safety, right?
Yeah, that's correct. That would not be a reason to demolish a building. We have a lot of buildings in town that generate noise. So yeah, no, that wouldn't.
So I look at these setbacks, the way they're proposed. Of course, this will come in detail later. So it looks like the setback from the University Avenue will be somewhat similar to the other homes in the area then?
Yeah, and that was what I noted, that our staff felt was really a positive about the proposal, because it creates more alignment and it really establishes more of kind of a street edge along that stretch of University.
Mhm. Well, so any Kurt Paulson, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think 3 questions, sorry. The curb cut and the driveway is proposed to be the same as what it is now, is that correct?
There are currently 2 curb cuts. They would be only including 1 in the new proposal, and our engineering staff noted that as a positive aspect of the project, but they also have not reviewed, turning radii or anything like that. So that would have to come at the, at the rezoning stage.
So the second question concerns, I know we've dealt with this before when we deal with 2 units that are 0 lot line. Did we ever get a clear interpretation from the engineering department? If it's going to be sold as a separate lot, it has to have its own lateral for sewer and water. Is that correct? Abbey?
I know that there is a firewall requirement. I do not recall the answer to your question about the lateral. I would have to go back and check how we handled the ones that we reviewed previously. Mark, do you remember about that?
There is a requirement for a separate sewer lateral. And one of them is required to be separate. I think it's the sewer lateral.
Okay. Because, and it's just a technical issue, but if these are 0 lot line townhouses, they're not duplexes in the sense that a duplex is 2 units on 1 parcel, which doesn't necessarily require a separate, and can be sold as single family, but the financing is a little different. So, and this is one of the issues we deal with all the time, which is obviously, if it's in a condominium structure, the financing system's a little different. So I guess just to the applicant, I don't think we necessarily would have to think of these as 0 lot lines, but is that going to be your intent to submit these as kind of a 0 lot line, separate parcels?
Roger?
Roger, we can't hear you. I think your microphone's maybe not connected.
Can't hear you.
Roger Schenk. So.
Yeah, I see him talking, but
we can't hear you, so. Okay, well, I guess Roger Schenk.
Well, while he's doing that, Abbey, what is the size of this parcel? Or the two combined? It didn't say.
Yeah, I apologize for not including that. It's around the same size as the Kestrel site, and I can't recall exactly the dimensions, and unfortunately DCI is down right now, so I cannot look that up. Let me just quick scroll here and I can find it.
Yeah, I think we have an email from Daphne on this.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, because I tried to look up the parcel size on DCI and it's down right now. So
yeah, it's really
Abby,
yeah.
I have it. It's about, like, this was just, me tracing it, so it's not completely accurate, but it's about 200 by 140 feet. And then the Kestrel is 180 feet by about 145 feet.
So more than half an acre. And then the final question would be from the University Avenue work group. I know they were looking at, there's some segments that are much more conducive to infill and 3 or 4 stories. Do you know, but this block, because it's mostly existing single family, do you know what the current recommendation or thinking is from that work group?
I think most of that work group is, I I mean, they're mostly focused on like east of Park Street because that's where most of the infill development is. I think the recommendation for this side is just to, I guess, preserve the character and the of like the neighborhood feel of this area.
And I'm trying to remember, the comprehensive plan shows the east of Park Street as avenue mixed use or neighborhood mixed use category. Okay. But this is established neighborhoods.
Mhm.
Yeah, and based on the comprehensive plan and at least the early feedback that we're getting from the University Avenue work group, we have been advising folks as they've contacted our office. Most of the inquiries that we have been getting have been for a 3 or 4 story apartment building that would redevelop the entirety of this site. So Roger is the first owner who's expressed interest in kind of keeping the smaller scale multifamily but still adding some infill, even though it really is pretty small. It's a net of 6 new units, but we've been advising, developers and prospects as they've contacted our office that our staff would not be supportive of a 4-story multifamily building in this location.
And this is not multifamily. These are going to be, if it's 0 lot line, this is single family.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
And for Roger, if you can hear right now, I just sent you over an email with the details of how to call in. If you just want to call in with your cell phone, we should be able to hear you that way.
Yeah, I think you should hear us now.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that, people. Backing up to the water and sewer question, my understanding is that the city wants individual waters to each unit, and what we would be proposing is a community sewer lateral. So it would be a manhole in University Avenue that comes up through the driveway there and then runs parallel to University Avenue and picks up each of the 6 units, as well as replacing the existing sewer for the 10-unit building. And that water is because they want the ability to turn off the water for each unit individually. It is our desire to go with the 0 lot line on the townhomes for financing purposes and resale, etc.
Any questions for Roger while he's on the phone or can communicate?
I will stay on the phone for the rest of the meeting. So,
okay. Anyone else who has either questions or comments or anything for Roger? Gretchen.
I did have a comment, or I did have a statement I wanted to read.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. So my name's Roger Schenk. My wife, Doreen, and I have been homeowners in Middleton since 1997. For 12 of those years, we lived at 7115 Hubbard Avenue, where we rescued and completely rebuilt a house from the 1920s. During this time, we enjoyed our proximity to Middleton's historic downtown with its great variety of stores and restaurants, all the time benefiting from our proximity to the public schools in Wisconsin. We have 1 child that's completed their education from our local school, and a second one that continues to benefit from our exceptionally well-funded school district. For many years, I was a partner in Holly Schenk Design Builders, during which time I was instrumental in restoring the Weinberg building at 1828 Parmenter Street, now the home of the Villa Dolce Cafe. When we purchased the Weinberg building around 1999, its condition was a far cry from its original historic beauty, as was the Dufresne building next door. Bill and Lynn Holly and I worked closely with the city to restore these buildings back to their original beauty. Not only did we restore their exterior appearance, but we invested the time and money necessary to restore the interiors. These improvements were instrumental in reviving those buildings for local businesses while creating downtown housing that people wanted. In the past 20 years, I've also been the construction manager and on-site superintendent for the construction of the Middleton Conservancy condominiums, as well as many houses in Middleton Hills and North Lake subdivision, to name a few of my projects. Doreen and I have recently purchased 7107 and 7109 University Avenue in Middleton, which is a unique rental property with 10 efficiency units and a standalone 4-bedroom house that date back to the 40s. It's our goal to improve the architectural appearance and livability of the existing 10 unit while developing an additional 6 townhomes, all fronting on University Avenue. Although the 10 unit efficiencies are small and unique, they serve a critical function for our vibrant downtown. All 10 units are leased for 12 months at a time. No short-term rental situations exist. Hardly a day goes by when I'm not on the grounds. I know the property and I know the tenants. I believe it's important that we understand who actually utilizes this housing. There's a young man that works full-time at FedEx, part-time at the Middleton Co-op, and helps his mother with assisted living on Parmenter Circle. He does all of this by bicycle with no car. There's a 30-something person that works for local lawn care and does part-time snow removal. A young person that pays rent electronically early every month and is hardly ever seen, just private. There's nothing, not causing problems. A 20-something that started at PetSmart is now a manager of PetSmart and has been accepted into their regional manager program. This person works long, hard hours, does not want to spend money on our overpriced new rental stock. There's a 40-something person that works for a local auto repair and drives a tow truck. A 20-something that runs a landscaping crew for Olson Toon. A 50-something person that has a degree in healthcare management, works in assisted living, and at a grocery store. They want to save money, hoping to buy a house someday. There's a 20-something that works as a mechanic at a Madison auto dealer. A person recently immigrated from Cuba that does delivery work, and a retired gentleman that receives disability and Social Security. It's our intention to create true townhomes, making it possible to someday sell each individually, thus addressing a small portion of the missing middle in our community's housing market. While at the same time, we're going to be protecting the rapidly diminishing stock of naturally occurring affordable housing available in our community. The diminishing availability of affordable housing in Middleton cannot be understated. My history of restoring historical downtown properties, combined with my new construction experience, is proof that I'm the right person for this project, the right person to improve the appearance of and the living experience offered by the existing 10-unit building. Please appreciate, we are proposing to invest $1 to $1.5 million in University Avenue in Middleton. If anybody has the motivation to assure that the existing 10-unit building is providing a quality living experience for the tenants while also being a good neighbor, it's us. Thank you.
Thank you, Raja. Really appreciate that. Okay, Gretchen, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for that overview of both your work in the past, redeveloping Middleton projects, and I'm curious to hear more about what you've learned about the existing building since you took over ownership, and what it might need and what improvements might be done to that building, along with how you visualize the 6 new units to work, and if rent would increase on those existing efficiencies because of the redevelopment work done on the site.
So on the rent, for starters, there is no plan to increase the rents on the existing 10-unit building due to the construction of the new stuff. That would all be cash flowed, figured out on its own accord. The 10-unit efficiencies are frankly at what they could get for rent. So I don't see that, there's not a lot of room to move those up in pricing and drive out the market. Is what I'm getting at there. The building itself, we've owned it for roughly 6 months now. As you guys are probably aware, it burnt down roughly 2 or 3 years ago. So it's in fairly decent condition. It mostly got rebuilt. The insides are all nice and new. There's all new appliances, etc. So we're just mainly doing maintenance and upkeep at this time. As far as improving the existing building, it's our desire to add to the front of it with some architectural dormers, perhaps, or porches, so to speak, create a little more forward and back in the front elevation, get some window boxes, create some landscaping. You know, right now when you drive out there, it is just all pavement. That's how I bought it. But that's all our desire, to basically make it look very cottagey and very nice. Having said all that, there's some considerations that have to be taken into account. As an existing building of that age, it's grandfathered from a lot of requirements. And if too much work is done, then, certain things, you start getting into issues with improvements and what might be required. Does that answer your questions, Gretchen?
Yeah, that's really helpful. So the proposed 6 units in these 2-unit buildings, are those 2-bedroom units?
Yes, actually, if you on the information given to you guys, it showed the floor plan. I believe it's the last page. So there's 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms up on the top floor. Then there's the living space with a powder room. And then on the entry, kind of the half-level entry level, there's another room. And then you go up those stairs to the front stair to the front entry.
Do these have basements and storage available?
There is no basement. That room down at the garage floor level would be sort of your extra space.
Okay. Do you anticipate having communal bike racks to lock up bikes, or would they have to store their bicycles in their units?
There would be, I'm not opposed to communal bike racks at all. I guess that, we're just in the beginning stages here. More site planning has to be worked out to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do appreciate there is the 2-car garage, but yeah, more bike storage is important.
Yeah. Also for the existing efficiency units, might be a nice feature to add. I like that you're adding a laundry next to the office. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Thanks for all the extra information.
My pleasure.
Okay, any further questions from the commissioners? John?
Yeah, I guess I'm just concerned about the parking, the closest, or the skinniness of the parking lot from the existing units to be able to turn 180 degrees from the street entrance into these parking lots and parking garage. Are you going to run into a conflict with people in the proposed units parking in front of the old building, or is just, do you feel that's sufficient enough room for them to turn in and park in those garages?
So I agree it is slightly tight, but what I would say to this is that there is a code for what those turning radiuses need to be, and that the drawing you're looking at was put together by Canozzi and Bruce Architects, and it's functionally correct. Some minor tweaking, et cetera, needs to be addressed. We have been working to try and keep the sidewalk in front of the existing building as close to University Avenue as the parking will allow us, because that's where we want to create the better look, the street front, so to speak, for the 10 unit, to get landscaping in there, give us a place to put perhaps a little bit of a front porch, and create more of a inviting quality living space there. So that's sort of the trade-off that's being negotiated on that parking lot. But to say it one more time, there is a code for what those turning radiuses are, and it meets it. If not exactly yet, it will.
Well, good. I appreciate that the offset off of University Avenue, because I don't want these, the neighborhood is mostly single family homes all the way across there. And these units look nice in your drawing. I don't want them suddenly smashing into the street as if this is somehow urban infill. And so it's just really, it's an issue. Think about the parking and what that does.
Yeah,
please don't.
I would add one thing, which is that we show right there 16 spaces, and we have 10 existing. We're asking for one more. And in my experience owning the property right now, I don't believe there are more than 7 or 8 cars that are are associated with the existing building,
Okay.
with the existing efficiency building.
Well, just I guess as you look at how to come into conformance on this thing, don't do damage to the front, to the street side of it, because I like it.
Yep, understood. I believe that's we're right about at 20 feet because that's what we understand that the ordinance that's being worked on would propose.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Gretchen. Kurt Paulson. Kurt Paulson.
He's pulling the Roger.
We can't hear you, Kurt. Kurt, we can't hear you.
That's a first for Kurt.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes, we can.
Unplugging and plugging in seems to work. On the right, on the east side of the property, the brown shaded area, is that, what is that?
That's water, storm retention.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, you're welcome.
So Abby, I was thinking about those neighbors on the Elmwood. So I think when I was looking at the distance, I think that's their house would be at least 40 to 50 feet away, right? So is there any setback requirements there or what is, and I saw there's a fence there in the back as well.
The current 10-unit building probably doesn't meet your typical rear setback requirements, but like I mentioned, it's been there since 1945 and it's grandfathered in. I can't measure the distance because again, DCI map is down right now and we rely on that. So I don't know the exact distance, but I would assume that 10-unit building has been there longer than anyone on Elmwood Avenue has owned their properties. So I'm sure that they were aware that it was there when they purchased their property.
Okay. Oh, Gretchen, you have your hand up? Or
Oh, but so Abby, with those setbacks, what does that deal with the laundry room? Which then it also would be within those historic setbacks, but it's a new building.
Yeah, this property would need a rezoning to Planned Development District or PDD. So Roger would need to propose setback requirements and those would have to get approved through the two-step rezoning process.
Okay, so aware of
Yeah,
that.
right now R1, for example, requires a 30-foot rear setback.
Yeah.
So I'm quite certain it doesn't meet the 30-foot as most even of the single family homes in the downtown neighborhood predate the zoning ordinance and don't comply and are grandfathered in.
Okay.
John, you have more questions or you're done?
I'm done, thank you.
Elder Ramsey.
Yes, I just want to make a comment that I'm very excited by the prospect of this. This is something that, a lot of us have been talking about for a long time, the idea of some affordable home ownership. It also has some affordable rental. I think it's a really unique way to take a piece of property that has historically been somewhat blighted and to update it and make it fit into the neighborhood. So I like this concept. I'm excited about seeing it go further, and I strongly encourage you to be able to, if you can, sell them as affordable home ownership. That would be a real boon in that area, I think. So I appreciate the work that you've done so far.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Dan, are you done?
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Gretchen.
I just had one thought looking at the plan in relationship to the parking and turning radius. It might be possible to ease that situation by turning the orientation perpendicular for the 2 units directly next to the driveway. They wouldn't have to do a complete U-turn to get into the garage. I'm not sure how that would impact visibility, but it might help those units turn into their garages. That was just a thought to share.
Okay, I'm sure he would appreciate that and they will work on it. Any further questions or comments? So Abby, what do you want from us here now? We gave the feedback. You need the concept approval with the engineering staff comments included.
Yeah, our staff recommendation is for concept approval with the engineering staff comments.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Ramsey
will
would
move-
make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Ramsey and second by Kurt Paulson. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion for the concept approval with the engineering staff comments included for the concept review for residential infill project at 7107 University Avenue LLC, 7107 to 7109 University Avenue, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, so the motion passes unanimously. So we are on to concept number 8. Item number 8. This is the concept review for proposed apartment building. This is the Madison Development Corporation, 6904 to 6908 Century Avenue. Abbey.
Yes, so this is also for concept review. Again, non-binding on the city. This project would also require a rezoning. This proposal is for a 50-unit, 3-story at Century Avenue and then stepped back to 4 further to the north building. This would be some workforce housing for the city. And the developer is Madison Development Corp. They are a nonprofit developer. They also have applied for community development disaster recovery grant from the city. And the city has applied for funding from the Department of Administration for that. And we should find out this Friday whether we were able to secure $3 million in funding to support this project in the second round. MDC is the only application that the city received and the deadline to apply was on Friday. Lori Heineman is on the call and it looks like she also has a couple of other members of the MDC staff and they can provide any materials that they would like and also answer questions.
Lori, go ahead, please.
I believe I have our architect, Kevin Burrow of Canothy Bruce, who will be going through the project.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Laurie. Good evening. This is Kevin Burrow with Canothy Bruce Architects. And as Abby had mentioned, this is a redevelopment of this property into a 3 transitioning to 4-story apartment building with a total of 50 units. We've got this project laid out such that we are able to have the parking be adjacent to the existing surface parking lot, which is a surplus surface lot for the Pick and Save grocery store, and then have the building stepping back along University Avenue in order to reduce the overall mass and feel of the project along the street, but still providing the much needed density of housing that Century Avenue can certainly handle with regards to being a county highway as well. So we're looking at 50 total units with almost 1-to-1 underground parking. We've got 48 stalls underground, then a surface parking lot of approximately 21 stalls. So we're trying to achieve sufficient parking while realizing we also have adjacency of a large surface parking lot as well, but trying to maintain exactly what we need within our parcel. So this development, again, would provide much needed housing into this area and would replace 2 single-family homes in the process. But as we are working through the final designs on this, we feel that this would be a great fit within the city.
Okay, well, I looked at it, looks really good. And I like where you have, you're providing that meeting places on the top at 2 different areas. So, okay, any questions? So let's start with.
May I add just a couple more comments to Kevin's comments?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So we're really excited about this project because what we want to do is incorporate what's called universal design. Universal design makes a building accessible to people of all mobility levels. And this is how we built the James A. Grasscamp 44 unit in the city of Madison, where there's no barriers to entry, there's no steps, you just simply roll in and You can roll into an elevator, roll down to the parking structure. So we're excited to incorporate universal design into this project as well. And Canothy Bruce also designed the grass camp for us. We also had the honor of actually meeting with some of the neighbors, thanks to Alder West, who introduced us to Don Knorr, and then we met several of the people at the Guard condos, and they gave us some great insight and inputs. We're making those adjustments and hope to be meeting with that group again in early January. So I just wanted to make sure you knew a couple of those things, and we are excited for the opportunity, and thank everyone on the city council for actually allowing the city to apply for those funds. And we're waiting for the opportunity with DOA, and hopefully that comes through.
Okay, so, well, Mark, you have your hand up. I guess you will come first, and then Gretchen, and then Kurt Paulson.
Please let the Plan Commission members go first. I just wanted to get in the queue. That's all.
Oh, okay, okay. So
Thank
you
you.
didn't have any, okay, all right,
I have a question for the applicant after everyone else has had a chance.
okay. Gretchen and then Kurt Paulson. Oh, okay, Kurt
That was a
Paulson.
mistake. It was still up from before, sorry.
Okay, okay, Kurt Paulson and then Mark Opez.
Yeah, so so I live in the neighborhood next to it. So I guess in terms of concept, I think one of the things this does is it fills the missing hole of what new urbanism has been pretty lacking in, and that's affordable rental housing in the development parcel. So I guess the question for Kevin is, I don't know how set in stone the architecture is, but if there's any way you can almost follow some of the design guides of the neighboring, either the Pick and Save, which has a flat roof, or the Guard Park, which has a slightly sloped roof, so that it looks as if it was, I guess, designed to be there from the beginning. I don't know how possible that is, but I think the neighborhood would welcome an opportunity to kind of fix the hole that DPZ left in the neighborhood, if I can be so bold.
Yes, thank you very much, Kurt, for those comments. We will be evaluating the exterior design. We are trying to stay within the prairie style character of this development. It is our desire to have a flat roof on this building to allow us in the future, if possible, to provide solar panels onto the roof as a green feature to the building. And then we may also have the opportunity for any green roof type structure should we deem that necessary or ideal for this development. Then it does give us the opportunity for these larger rooftop patio areas off of the fourth floor, as you can see on these renderings where the building does step back. So we have our community room up there, so we have access to larger outdoor gathering space for all residents. But we certainly will study the adjacent architecture in regards to the design, character, and texture of the building to try and fit in as best as we can.
Thank you.
More questions, Kurt? Okay, all right, so the next would be actually John Schaefer. John?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I like the design. I'm getting kind of tired of seeing the same apartment buildings. Every design coming looking the same. I like the verticalness of this design. I think it fits in well. My question was, how does this relate to the height of the buildings around it? I don't know the neighborhood that well. And can you comment on to how this height of this building fits in to its neighbors?
Kevin or Lloyd?
Yeah, being a flat roof structure, we are minimizing the overall height on the 4-story portion. Obviously, the 3-story portion is less, but the condominiums behind us in the other development do have pitched roofs, which actually increase their overall height. So we're trying to be sensitive and basically within scale and massing of the adjacent properties. I don't have the exact dimensions, though, of our neighboring parcels.
Okay, but that doesn't seem out of sync from looking at the diagram. So
No, that's our desire to blend in.
And the other issue, I missed the part you're talking about, the parking. There's that big parking lot next to you, but that's not owned. Who owns that parking lot?
That's owned by the Pick and Save property in general, and that's used for employee parking and surplus parking for large holiday season type shoppers.
So that's not involved in your plan in any way whatsoever.
No, unfortunately, it's set aside for the Pick and Save development.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions, John? The next is Susan West and then Mark Opez. Susan?
Yes, I think I can answer a little bit more of both Kurt and John's comments in terms of the architecture. In addition to being the alder, I serve on the Middleton Hills Neighborhood Association Architectural Review Committee and have for a long time. The prairie style fits in very well with the styles of architecture in the neighborhood. And actually for the first part of the commercial area on Frank Lloyd Wright, those are flat top buildings very similar to this. So I think it would fit very well. The parking lot belongs to, actually, it's part of the Pick and Save, but Pick and Save is owned by Dan Erdman. So he's the owner of the parking lot area. I'd also like to say I was impressed with how willing MDC was to work with the residents of Guard Park in terms of coming up with ways to basically prevent residents from walking over into the Guard Park area, but still being friendly and trying to come up with a solution for getting residents of this building into the city park that's adjacent to Guard Park and behind Meadowbrook. So I think they've been done really well in terms of reaching out to the adjacent neighbors.
Thank you, Elder Susan West. So Mark, Susan, you're done? You have any more comments or that's it?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Mark Opitz?
Yes, my question pertains to the connectivity issues as well. I understand that the adjoining parking lot to the east is owned by another entity, Dan Erdman. Have you actually reached out to him to ask about connecting? Has there been a dialogue to try and have that connectivity, and maybe even as a way to avoid having a driveway off of Century Avenue and instead having access from that major driveway? I would almost call it a private street, which has a left turn lane off Century. So I'm almost putting on a public works colleague's hat here. You know, there's that nice left turn lane going eastbound on Century that goes into the shopping center, and that parking lot could connect to this property as well. So I'm just wondering if you've had that dialogue with Dan Erdman and have asked about the possibility of connections.
May I answer that?
Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
I haven't come up with that dialogue, Mark. That's actually a really great idea. But I have been in discussions with Natalie Erdman, and she's been obviously sharing information with Dan. We've shared the property information. They were very supportive of the idea of putting this project there and said that they would be even willing to discuss renting some additional parking spaces if we need them. I think we've got adequate ones. And I actually just spoke with Natalie about the project again today. And so, you know, we could certainly run that idea by them. I would imagine that their parking spaces are pretty valuable to them, but it's certainly something I'd be willing to bring up with them.
If we can look at a site plan, please, for that, for what you're proposing. You know, I just wonder if there's a way to have more efficient design and access, you know, safer access off Century, and if there's a mutually beneficial way for the Erdmans to work with you on achieving mutual goals and including the connectivity with the neighborhood. You know, people are obviously, who live here, going to want to shop at the grocery store and get to the park, as Alder West pointed out. I just would really encourage that dialogue. I'm happy to do anything I can to be part of that discussion, if that is helpful to you.
Okay, excellent. John Schaefer and then Kurt Paulson.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce what Mark Opitz's idea. It's not about the need for the additional parking. It's about the need for more flow in and out of that parking lot, having not one single isolated spot off of that road, because it gets pretty busy. And so the idea of linking it together so you can enter all of these places from many different directions and intertwine, I think would be very nice to have. So
Thank you, John. Kurt Paulson?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what is the distance from the street to the beginning of the building at what you're identifying as a plaza here?
With the current design, it's 15 feet, but we're actually evaluating that with our civil engineer to see if we can push it back slightly to provide a little bit more generous space up front.
Because I was going to ask that if there's a objection from the condos near behind you, what would it look like to push the building a couple feet closer to the street, provide more green space in the back? But that may not work with your design concept.
Yeah, what we've discovered is for stormwater, we really want to try and minimize encouraging any stormwater to the back property line, as we were showing in concept here. And it's been advised to us to try and get that cleared out, so to speak. So we're looking at trying to enlarge the capacity in front, which would push the building back slightly, but then mitigate any concerns for any overflow of stormwater onto their property.
Thank you.
Pradeep, may I comment on that, on the stormwater?
Sure, go ahead.
On the back area of the corner where Brookdale and this development and Guard Park come together, there currently is a muddy stormwater sort of swale. So I think putting the stormwater in the front is a very wise idea. The neighbors didn't seem to be concerned about how close it was to the back. They just wanted a fence, or actually not a fence, but a shrubbery area that could go along there as the barrier. But I think the stormwater probably shouldn't go on the back because of how wet that land is in that area. I'm
Okay,
through.
Thank you, Elder West. Gretchen?
Just two comments. One other one about the parking is it looks like it would be fairly difficult for UPS or a moving truck to turn around and get out of there once they got in. So I would also support dialogue of another way out. And the other question was if this maybe needs to go in front of the sustainability committee in terms of the amount of large south-facing windows and a lack of eave to provide shade in the summer. I don't know. I haven't seen that on apartment buildings, but it would fit with the architecture of the prairie style. And it might be a valuable thing to consider for people with those large windows that are south facing. Just another comment.
Thank you, Gretchen. Okay, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, need a motion to approve.
Schaefer moves.
It's for concept approval, right?
Let's say, okay, so it will be the concept approval with engineering staff comments included.
Right.
Need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by John Schaefer, second by Kurt Paulson. This is the concept approval of the proposed apartment building by the Madison Development Corporation at 6908 to 6908 Century Avenue, including the engineering staff comments. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. I know that there's a one abstention. So, okay, we are on to item number 9. This is the discussion of concept for zoning ordinance rewrite project. Mark, so we
Yes.
have somebody from Vanderbilt, you said, right?
We do not. That was, in my earlier staff comments, I had made a reference to that, but I had forgotten that we had agreed with them that city staff would take this on. So
Okay,
they,
all right.
they have put in your packet, they prepared for you, which we put in your packet, a couple documents. One is this overview that describes the districts that they have proposed in consultation with the work group and city staff. And then the other document is a PowerPoint, is a presentation, which is what I was going to go through this evening. So why don't we, thank you, Daphne, I think you're driving it. So as you know, we embarked on this project a few months ago, and this is really the first opportunity that we are taking to brief the Planning Commission on the work completed to date. And we are going to ask for your feedback, specifically on the proposed new zoning districts and their definitions. So the schedule, I'm reviewing that. The memo that has been prepared by Vanderwall Associates, Diagnostic and Solutions memo, the proposed zoning district breakdown, and key policy decisions. That's the focus of this presentation tonight. As I mentioned, we've been at this for several months. We began in July. We've had stakeholder listening sessions. We have this informal work group that's guiding the project, thanks to Randy Bruce from the Planning Commission, Justin Balwig from Zoning Board of Appeals, and Spencer Schumacher from the Sustainability Committee. We've met a couple of times, and we had a public workshop in August that attracted about 8 people. Hopefully, and I fully expect we'll have a lot more interest as we move forward with this. And then we've gone through this fall with the key issues and drafting the zoning district and the definitions. So yeah, thank you. So the key issues that we've identified, and I will take some time to read this. I assume that you've looked through this in the packet, but I think it's helpful to review as we have this discussion tonight. The need for new districts to provide flexibility and reflect the new and desired development types. Second is the lack of options in housing densities and types without a planned development. That's, in other words, criticism of our existing zoning ordinance. Third issue identified is to increase user friendliness, predictability, and mixed use opportunities. Fourth is reduce parking requirements and incentivize incorporating sustainability above state limits. Fifth is increase commercial and residential densities and mixed use opportunities in strategic locations. Next, please. So the question is, what can the new ordinance do? And the opportunities that we see working with our consultant team is that we have the opportunity to implement the comprehensive plan recommendations and plans future land use map. That's really the essence of how the rubber meets the road with the comp plan, putting that into action. Another opportunity is to respond to statutory and case law changes, implement other policy objectives of the city, increase user friendliness, improve the city's flexibility with the zoning procedures that we have, that we administer, and to create a more predictable review process and more predictable development outcomes. The way the Vanderwall team is proposing to organize the new zoning code is shown on the screen here. I'm not going to read all these now, but they are very well, I think the organization is it works well. It is a template that they've used in several other communities, so we are familiar with their approach here. I'm not surprised that this is what they're proposing. I would note that we are planning to keep our sign ordinance separate per the advice of our city attorney. So the way it would be, what they are recommending is that we have an introduction definition section. Of course, the purpose statements, general provisions, definitions, that would be the introductory section. Then we'd establish the zoning districts, which is what the focus of today's meeting. We are proposing new names and a mix of zoning districts without using any of the existing zoning classifications that we currently have, like R1, R2, B1, B2, etc. Industrial. The reason for that is so that we can avoid confusion in the future as to whether we were talking about, B1 under previous definition or under the revised definition. So we are proposing all new names today. The type of zoning code would be a hybrid zoning that incorporates elements of Euclidean zoning, performance, and form-based codes. There will be a section on land use regulations, some more generalized, and then create a table of land uses by zoning district. Bulk regulations, that means the mass of the building, setbacks, things like that would be in their own chapter. Especially we want to address older parts of the city with this and have some flexibility while still accommodating the older parts of the city. There'd be a section on non-conforming situations. One of the recommendations that Vanderwall has recommended from the get-go is to make all non-conforming lots, structures, and sites fully legal to promote reinvestment. This does not pertain to uses, however. Performance standards would be another section, placing all standards in one area of the zoning code with using tables, figures, and diagrams as to provide examples. And then we also have the objective of reducing parking standards and increase multimodal opportunities. There'd be sections on exterior building design standards, incorporating form-based design standards by land use. We'd have a section on landscaping requirements. Right now we have a separate addendum to to our, we call it the off-street parking and landscaping standards. And so that would be integrated into our zoning code. It would utilize a point-based system to provide flexibility. That's what we do today. But this would be updated to reflect, contemporary practices in other communities as well. Signage would be a later part of the work they're doing. That'll be next spring, late winter, early spring. But importantly, there was a major Supreme Court decision going on. It's over 5 years ago now, maybe even quite a bit longer than that. I can't remember. It's 2014, Kurt, or I don't remember when it was, but involved a church in Arizona that the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the church with their complaint about the town of Gilbert in Arizona. I won't get into the details, but it was a First Amendment case that had major ramifications for sign ordinances across the country. So this project is finally giving us the opportunity to overhaul our sign ordinance and make sure we are compliant with that decision. And then there'd be a section on administration and procedures. So moving on to then at the end of this process, then once we have all the zoning definitions, classifications identified, at that point, then we would develop a zoning map that incorporates the new zoning districts into a completely new zoning map. We could have down zoning or up zoning. If there is down zoning, that will require adoption by a 2/3 majority of the total membership of the council. Next. So now I'm going to go through the zoning district breakdown, and that was what the other packet, what the other material in this packet was that we started with. We don't have to go back to it now. But what I really like about this presentation is that the Vanderwall team has provided some images to help convey the type of density that we're talking about with some of these districts. So Vanderwall's proposing breaking our single family districts into low, medium, urban, and high density definitions. And then also having a mobile home residential category. So the single family residential medium would be based on current R1 standards, which call for a minimum lot size of 7,200 square feet. Low density would be larger than that. The urban and high density lots would be, we have quite a few of those in the city. Most of them are, or many of them are in planned development districts, such as Cedar Ridge neighborhood, northeast side of the city, or Middleton Hills, or Hidden Oaks and Misty Valley. Those are examples. But we also have some older parts of the city, like Clark Street, downtown neighborhoods that would likely take on some of these zoning categories. We have a frequent problem in the city of where residents have smaller lots than what the standard minimum lot size requires, and then they need to get a variance to put on, to add a garage to their property, or to expand to put on a deck or what have you. So we've had a lot of situations where the larger lots, the minimum standards that we have with R1 zoning just don't fit a lot of our older parts of the city. So this would be a way to solve that problem. Next slide, please.
Mark,
yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
What is that Act 67?
Act 67 pertains to mobile home residential. I'm not familiar with that off the top of my head. Maybe
okay, okay, so well, anyway, maybe we won't have any area to classify as a mobile home residential in any case. Okay, go ahead.
I think what I suspect is that gives requirements to communities that you have to provide for mobile home residential. Kurt, do you happen to know off the top of your head what that is? I did not research that before this presentation.
A lot of Act 67 has to do with non-conforming lots and substandard lot sizes. Okay. I can send you the link.
Yeah, I haven't prepared. I was on vacation last week, so I'm not as well prepared for this as I would hope to be. But
so I was just curious why we need mobile home residential. Anyway, go ahead.
We'll get you that information, Mayor. Be happy to look into that for you. Multifamily residential would be broken into several new categories. I really like these definitions. The two-family duplex versus a two-flat. So duplex is side by side based on existing R2 zoning that we currently have. A two-flat would be more a vertical orientation to the housing units, the dwelling units. And then multifamily residential in low, medium, urban, and high density categories, the same vernacular as the single family. So we can move on. It's pretty straightforward. So here are some examples. So this is the minimum lot size, or this is a 10,000 square foot lot size. This would be an example of the low density that's envisioned. And this is in the Stonefield neighborhood on the southeast side of Middleton. So this is what that looks like approximately. You know, these are just meant to give you an idea of the type of density that we're talking. Next slide, please. Here's single family residential medium was based on the existing R1 minimum standard of 7,200 square feet. And they chose an area here in the older part of the city, probably built in the 60s, not far from the high school, east of Park Street, just north, behind the Kestrel. Here are residential urban. Middleton Beach Road comes to mind with a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. And frankly, some of those are even smaller on Middleton Beach Road, but this is pretty close, pretty comparable. Next slide. And then here's 3,000 minimum lot size. And quite a few of the lots in Middleton Hills, with the exception of the Paulson Palatial Estate, are at 3,000 square feet. I'm Kurt, I'm just kidding. The mobile home development, there are none of these in the city. So this is an example that they took from outside the community. I don't know from where, but this gives you an example of what mobile home development looks like. Two-family residential duplex is south of Century. They chose this example of on Spring Grove Court. So this is actually just across the street from the Craftsman, south of Century Avenue. Minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. And here's a 2-flat example. This is near downtown. We have quite a few examples downtown of what looks like single family residences, but they've been divided into 2 and sometimes even 3 flats. Example of multifamily residential low from 1 to 8 units. This is just north of Century Avenue, west of High Road. I'm sorry, this is Highland Terrace. This is actually up on the northeast side by Cedar Ridge. There was another example that they were going to use, and they used this one instead. So this is just up the hill at the traffic signal at Century and Highland Way. Here's an example also nearby that is, I think that's in the, it's probably, oh, that's the, just down the hill from there, that's the Harbor Village condos. So an example of 9 to 20 units in a building. And then this is up also in the same neighborhood, a little farther up the hill, the Highland Way residences. Alder Ramsey, you're familiar with all these, obviously, because they're right in your neighborhood.
Yeah, you like my neighborhood, don't you?
Well, Vanderwall does. They selected these. It's a very nice neighborhood, so that's why I think they use these examples. And then example of multifamily residential high density, 50 to 100 units. This is just west of it's part of Greenway Center, just west of behind the Ancho and Agave restaurant back there towards the golf course at the base of the hill. Can't remember the name of that. Next, we are going to move from residential to a mixed-use zoning categories. Institutional, which does use I as what currently called industrial, but in this case would be redefined as institutional. Institutional would be one category, and then we have several categories like office neighborhood would be one, simply one that's mixed-use neighborhood based on existing B1, which is our neighborhood commercial-oriented businesses. Oftentimes you see that along University Avenue and mainly University Avenue is where that is. Mixed-use avenue, also on University Avenue, Middleton Springs area is zone B2. Some of the uses in the Middleton Hills area are B2, even though they're zoned planned development district. Mixed-use urban, this would be, this actually, I'm not sure I entirely agree with this. B3 is our highway business district. So it's more of a sprawling district currently, but that's not how I think this is envisioned. So mixed-use urban would be more of a newer category. And then mixed-use downtown is quite obvious what that is. Examples in these categories, the high school, of course, is a classic example of institutional. Mixed-use office neighborhood. This is Parmenter Street, just south of Lee. This is the Laurie's Pedigree. So that's an example they felt conveyed this concept. Next, please. The mixed-use neighborhood Parmenter, which is just down the road from Laurie's Pedigree. Here's mixed use, another example of an older highway commercial avenue example. This is on University Avenue across from, well, you know where everyone knows where Dunn's Import is, by Maple Street. Mixed use urban, larger scale commercial, Costco. And then of course our beloved downtown is a good example of the downtown mixed use category. Our industrial zoning districts would be broken into 4 categories: research park, industrial light, medium, and heavy. And some more examples for each of these. So this is the research park. There's the light industrial, medium, that's fine, Daphne. Medium is off of, this is the Airport Road Business Park. And then this is not in the city, but this is an example of what a heavy industrial would look like from the air. We would also be creating a category called rural holding zoning district. This is intended for agricultural uses on a long-term basis, minimum 35 acres per dwelling unit. This would match the county zoning classification of existing agricultural district that we have in the city and that the county uses. And that's an example of the Bell Farms would be an example of this before it's rezoned to PDD. Then we have a couple specialized zoning districts, airport, parks and rec, which would be a new category. Oftentimes in almost all cases, our current parkland is in a residential zoning district, R1 zoning district, or planned development district, but this would be a new zoning classification. And then conservancy would be the same as our conservancy lowland is what we currently have. We also have something called conservancy upland, but there's nothing in the city that is zoned conservancy upland. So we would just have one conservancy zoning designation. They also are recommending additional zoning districts for intensive outdoor storage, intensive outdoor commercial, adult-oriented entertainment, which is something that we are required to have in our zoning ordinance to have a place where that can be established with according to certain standards. And extraction or disposal would be another new category.
So Mark, I did mention adult-oriented entertainment. Why are we required? I mean, we don't have any now. We are not required now. So why are we required going forward?
Our ordinance, actually, our current zoning ordinance does have the accommodation for adult-oriented entertainment. It's in our industrial zoning district, and it might also be in B3 as a conditional use. So we actually do have a provision for that. We had to add that. I don't remember when that was added, but it was probably about over 10 years ago that got added to our current ordinance. And then there's
permitted in B3, Mark.
Pardon me?
It's permitted in B3.
But I think it's
I'm just permitted in B3. Well, you remember that we had a huge problem with those two, whatever establishment were, and took a really lot of effort to get rid of them. And here actually legally creating it anyway. So I guess we are going to have to talk
but
about
we currently have it, as Abby noted, it's currently in B3. I thought it was industrial, but
it's in industrial as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I knew it was in industrial, but I wasn't sure if it was in B3. But then they have to be licensed pursuant to section 7.13 of our city ordinances. So there are some standards that they have to, they have to be spaced appropriately from other types of uses that are deemed incompatible. So there's a lot of regulations, and we want, that are associated with such an establishment being allowed to operate in the city. So yes, we currently don't have any like that, but this is something we have to accommodate.
Yeah, and Mayor, I believe in one of our discussions with Vanderwall, they were saying that, we have to have these. It's better that we do have these in our ordinances already, so we have the regulations in place, so that, in the future, if, a proposal ever comes, we don't, we don't have, we're not protected in that way. So this is actually protecting the city in a lot of these, more intensive uses, so that we have the regulations in place for if something were to ever come up.
Okay.
So
thank
there
you.
would have to be a rezoning procedure, and it's easier for the city to use its discretion to act on a rezoning application than it is to review a conditional use permit, for example, where there's more limits in terms of how the city can impose its will on approving a conditional use.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I think, oh yeah, so here's some examples of outdoor storage, commercial or racetrack. And then of course we have the use that's often advertised as being in Middleton, but it's really in the town of Middleton. And then a quarry, this is just, I don't know which quarry, but we all know what a quarry is. So the key policy decisions before you tonight, and this is the last slide. What do you think about our single family zoning district approach, where we have these tiered by lot size, and also the high density single family in the 1 to 4 unit district? We specifically wanted your feedback on that, and how to address existing single family neighborhoods. Should we upzone them all to reflect the comprehensive plan, to allow 1 to 4 units in every single family neighborhood? Should we retain an R1 equivalent district and upzone only portions of existing neighborhoods? That's another way to go. What about where lot sizes vary widely, where mixed residential is already present, or where mixed uses are already present? So these are some questions that Vanderwall has flagged to help guide the discussion at this meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to the commission, and happy to answer any questions you have, or we would welcome and encourage your active discussion about these ideas.
Thank you. So before I will ask you a question. So there's a lot here. So I was just going to ask you that who else is using these? Any other cities? Or is it very common, or is it going to be? Yes.
Well, they have, when Vanderwall was one of the applicants to do this work, one of the consultants who applied for this, I noticed that they had a template similar to this in use in several of the communities that they cited as references. But this has been modified and tailored to the city. It's not a carbon copy exactly of other communities. I think it was Whitewater or Fort Atkinson was an example, Wausau. I think they've done some work in, I can't remember the list of communities now. I think in Oshkosh they've done some work. So, but we have, with the guidance of the work group that Commissioner Bruce serves on, and with our review at the staff level, we have nudged them into a more urban adaptation of their template to reflect our more urban focused community and as embodied in our comprehensive plan. So does that answer your question, Mayor?
Yeah, sure. Okay. All right. So John Schaefer and then Kurt Paulson.
Yeah, I'm excited about all the work because half of what we deal with in this committee is everything turning to PDD because our zoning doesn't allow for what goes on. It's the very last thing about this existing single family neighborhoods kind of grabbed me by the neck, but I've seen it through the whole thing that what it seems to be lacking in this whole process is some ability or mechanism to take into account, strongly take into account the character of a neighborhood. And when you're talking about, did we go into a neighborhood and did we parcel it out? Would we rezone it? We take little pockets, or do we as a city redefine what a neighborhood is about when the neighborhood's already there? I think there has to be an ability to look at all of this and say the number one criteria needs to be is the neighborhood that we have existing when we zone, is the zoning we put in there, does it have the ability to be malleable, or does it reflect the character of the neighborhood that's already there? I've fought this city for 20, 30 years over issues just exactly like this, where the plan commission or city comes in and defines that my neighborhood is supposed to be something different than what it is. And many times we've won because in fact, it's laying a set of definitions on top of a neighborhood without taking into consideration what the neighborhood is. So as you move forward with this, I would strongly advocate, and I will be a strong proponent of the ability to feed into these zoning issues that the character of a neighborhood has to be part of any rezoning that takes place. Enough said.
Okay, thank you, Don. Kurt Paulson?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, I guess, related to a number of these things. Mark, why on the multifamily districts does it list a minimum lot size rather than lot area per dwelling unit? And just to flag that for you, that a lot of cities are moving to that of lot area per dwelling unit, because that allows then that you might have a smaller, if you have a smaller parcel, you might have like a small multifamily of like 8 units. But then if you could acquire a larger parcel, maybe you go up to 16, so that the density is not a minimum lot size.
I like that idea. I'll find out for you, Commissioner Paulson.
Yeah. You just regulate the lot area per dwelling unit, which it looks like we're doing for the R3, the established in the multifamily. The second question is, we worked very carefully on the comprehensive plan language for established neighborhoods that would envision, where appropriate, I remember we wrote that in there, townhouses and other sort of attached housing by conditional use. And yet the memo from Vanderwall seems to poo-poo that idea and says we don't actually want to have any conditional uses specified. We just want to keep up this discretion to have to rezone, which seems to be thwarting the purpose of what we've mentioned. So, and I guess to put this in context for people who don't geek out on Wisconsin's comprehensive planning law like I do, the whole purpose of the change in Act 67 to conditional uses was the idea that a city, by establishing a conditional use, would say these are the types of land uses that we do actually want to see in a neighborhood. But either because of special locations or because of special conditions are subject to conditional use, which we then specify in the ordinance. Then if those conditions are met, that development is appropriate. So one thing we talked about in the comprehensive plan is in an established neighborhood, someone may have a large corner lot that is like 12,000 square feet. That may be a case that is appropriate for like 8 units designed on a house scale sort of architecture, but that fits within the character of the neighborhood, but still translates to 8 units, right? Because I guess to John's point, John seems to be suggesting that every neighborhood gets the right to just kind of lock itself into place as it was in time. But if that's true, that really thwarts the goals in our comprehensive plan of providing opportunities for kind of incremental, small scale density changes to allow a greater variety of housing in many of our established neighborhoods. Obviously, we're not talking about 4-story buildings in established neighborhoods. But this seems to be going against what we explicitly discussed in our comprehensive plan. So I'll get your feedback on that, Mark.
You'd like my feedback, you said?
Yeah, do you know why they're against the conditional use idea?
I would prefer that they respond to that directly. Let me check on that for you, okay? I think that's an important question, and I will provide a report for the next.
Yeah, maybe you can write these down and then you can ask them to respond. Yep. So next is, are you done, Kurt? Kurt, you're done?
Yes,
okay, so
for now.
Next one is Randy Bruce and then John Schaefer.
Yes, I just, I wanted to reinforce Kurt's comments about the minimum lot sizes in the multifamily areas. Those 40,000 square foot or 80,000 square foot lot sizes really doesn't do us much good when we'll still end up with PDDs all over the place if we maintain that. I was wondering about the mixed use categories as well. We had the mixed use avenue has a 10,000 square foot minimum, and I'm not sure how that fits into some of the smaller lots on University Avenue, but we may have to look at that one as well as the mixed use urban. And even their parks had a 3-acre minimum, and our Stone Horse Green is clearly much less than 3 acres. So there may be areas for pocket parks that would want to have smaller lot sizes.
You're absolutely right. You can go on that, on the Boundary Road and in that Stonefield Village, that's more than, maybe more, 1/4 of an acre, even smaller. And then you go on there are many others too. So I think, yeah, we got to be a little bit careful here. So great point, Randy.
Getting back to the discussion that John and Kurt have both taken regarding, the existing neighborhoods. I think we do need to take a look at the two approaches. Are we going to just take a look at rezoning entire neighborhoods, or are we going to be looking at just specific lots or specific districts to do this in?
We probably have to keep it simple, right?
Well,
So
we
much
aren't-
simple.
The idea here is we're intentionally establishing the type of zoning classifications that we desire to have in the city based on our comprehensive plan and various goals of the city. And we've intentionally decoupled this from the discussion about how this gets applied to neighborhoods in the city. We are trying to provide a range of zoning classifications that can be adapted to the entire city, and that decision for how this gets applied to existing neighborhoods will come at a later time. But we want to make sure we have that flexibility now. It's easier to pare down zoning classifications than to add later on. We want to be able to have a full range of options at our fingertips at our disposal, so that we don't have to go back and add a classification that we didn't think of. So just because we have all these defined doesn't mean that each of these will be applied. There may be cases we don't apply any of these. So that could very well be an outcome.
That is a good idea. Randy, you have some more points? Randy?
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Next one is John Schaefer and then Gretchen.
Yeah, I don't want to be misunderstood on this. I think I come back to Kurt that I'm not against. I think I like everything that Kurt is talking about. That there's the need to have reasonable expectations of potentials to do something different. What I'm looking against is the idea of reclassifying existing neighborhoods that are already infilled and totally mature in what they are. And at some point I lived near downtown, and it's been told to me that our neighborhood was redefined as being a blighted district, which is so far from the truth. But because of that enabled the concept of infill. So anybody who came into the neighborhood and wanted to infill had an inside, because we were now a blighted neighborhood. And that's a washover that I want to avoid. What I want to say is, when you talk about the character of a neighborhood, look at the houses around it. We do this already. We look at, if everything's a single story, we don't put in a 10-story building and stuff like that. So I want to be more reasonable about this. I'm just saying that I think that when we look at mature existing neighborhoods, we shouldn't be trying to do a big whitewash over those whole things. And let's be sensitive to the neighborhood as part of the process of how we rezone. And if we have a zoning ordinance that does not allow for that to happen, then it's not a good zoning ordinance.
Thank you, John.
Mhm.
Okay, the next one is Gretchen.
Great discussion. I have a lot of thoughts about what everybody else said, and I appreciate that they were all said. My two questions are how this interacts with something like the TIF districting that's already established. And then the other question is, if we have all the conditional uses in here, like, I don't know if an archery range was a conditional use in a previous area or not. The cemetery, for example, has created a big hassle a few months ago. We don't have any regulations on that. I just want to make sure all the conditional uses are given their own code, if that's the way this is going, should really go through a fine tooth comb, make sure they're all there.
I would imagine that institutional would address the cemetery issue. What was the other one you said? Archery?
Like an archery or shooting range. I'm not sure. I just came up with it off the top of my head.
Yeah. I'm sure, I haven't looked at, we're just at this point now, we haven't, gone into a full definitions of all these. I'm sure it's based, again, they have a template. If you look at what they've done in other committees, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of that language because they've developed an approach that has, we're going to end up with a zoning ordinance that's over 200 pages long, quite frankly. And that has been a concern of mine, but it's also the way it's being organized and structured. It's going to be easier to use, pretty easy to use in my view. That's the whole goal here. So I have no doubt that they are comprehensively looking at the various uses, including recreational uses like you identified, Gretchen. So
I just think if you get rid of most musts and shoulds, it'll be a better ordinance.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Gretchen. And I am told that there will be somewhere additional dwelling units, ADU will be included in some form here. So, okay.
One of the questions, I'm sorry.
Kurt and Abby, you did say that we are going to be additional dwelling ADU will be included in this zoning rewrite, right?
That's correct. Yeah, they're not to that stage yet.
Okay. All right, Kurt, you have some final comments?
Yeah, a couple comments, I guess, to John's getting rid of the must and shall. There's a famous book on sustainable urban design, which says, change all your maximums to minimums and your minimums to maximums. So it's minimum density and maximum parking, and that's much more sustainable. So, Mark, the presentation you showed on some of those under the neighborhood mixed use and the avenue mixed use, those are actually not mixed use buildings. Those are just commercial buildings. And I guess the design perspective is, when we say mixed use, we mean generally some sort of commercial or office with housing on top. And
That's a very good comment. Yep.
Are we thinking that those types of streets, like that's not mixed use, that's just commercial? Do we want to preserve some areas just for commercial oriented uses with a kind of strip development orientation? Or are we imagining that this could be a 3-story building where there's a restaurant or office or retail on the first floor and then 2 floors of housing or 3 floors of housing?
I certainly would have the latter definition in my head based on the name of this category. So I would agree with you 100% that that's the way we would be. That's what mixed use is. So let me
They are not envisioning because we currently have like B2 and B3, which are only kind of retail and office, no housing. Are they envisioning that there would still be areas that are only retail and office and no housing? Or by mixed use, do they mean housing everywhere?
I assume it's the latter, but I think that's a very important clarification that I will ask them tomorrow, and this will be part of my report back to the commission.
Maybe I can jump in here a little bit.
Go ahead, Andy.
There's been some discussion in the work group as to whether mixed use means truly a mixed use, or whether we could have, for instance, an entirely residential building in a mixed use district. Just in my previous life, I struggled quite a bit trying to figure out how to provide housing in areas that really couldn't support commercial use or weren't suitable for commercial use, but were designated as mixed use and required to have a first floor commercial component. And what ultimately happens is that the commercial gets diluted to a point where it becomes unviable. I would strongly argue that our mixed use designation could be more form-based in a way. In other words, the use could be residential, it could be office, it could be retail, and that we don't get too hung up on trying to define commercial on the first floor and housing above, but to allow for some more flexibility. Otherwise, we're going to be caught into the PDD trap again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, now, I guess, Mark, do you have enough information now to take back to Vanderwall? I mean, we can keep on this discussion, but
if there's more comments, I would love to have all the comments as much as we can now, because I think the feedback you're providing is helping to improve the work that we're doing. So one of the questions I would have is, for example, do we want a single family classification, a low density classification with the minimum size of 10,000 square feet? You know, that's one of the questions that I would have. If you can go to that slide, the residential slides, you know, right now our minimum is 7,200 square feet. So do we even want to introduce the idea of a 10,000 minimum lot size, which is what Northlake and Foxridge and Stonefield typically are? Those lots are oftentimes well over 10,000 square feet. So do we even want a single family residential low example?
But
that was my comment
now.
I was going to make, Mark, is that it's a down zoning and it's not reflective of what is the current practice right now. So I don't see why we would introduce something that would down zone an entire neighborhood that has a minimum lot size right now of 7,200. Regardless of how the lots, you know, regardless of the current lot size, their minimum is 7,200.
How do commission members feel about that? Because I agree with Abbey on this.
Well, I agree with Abbey too. So,
yeah.
Okay, so let's see. We got a lot of people. We got John Schaefer, Gretchen, Kurt Paulson, and Randy Bruce. Let's start with John Schaefer, then Gretchen, and then Kurt, and then Randy.
Yes, to be quick, I agree with Randy, and I feel that the sense of conflict. And, you know, the idea is we tend to designate a zoning thing to a building as opposed to a block or a neighborhood. I come back to the sense of the neighborhood. Why can't you have a multi-use neighborhood where you might have some buildings that are solely residential, some that are solely commercial, and some that are mixed, but the blend of the block or the neighborhood or however distance or zone you put it actually reflects all of those, but allows that kind of flexibility for individuality within those zones. I don't know if that's at all remotely possible, but I'm kind of coming down on this sense that we have to put a box and put a number on something, and then it's locked into that box.
Thank you, John. Gretchen, and then Randy. Then Gretchen, and then Kurt, and then Randy.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I saw the mixed use and the idea of making a totally new way to zone the city. I thought, oh, good, now we're going to get rid of individual pockets where you need to really study the map and try to figure out what color this one lot is. It makes more sense to look at chunks of the neighborhood, like you have New York City, right? You walk around Central Park and you have businesses, you have some businesses on the bottom and residential on top, but within that block, you'll have brownstones that are flats, you'll have purely residential with a doorman. You have a whole mixed use, and that's a vibrant neighborhood. And you also have a school in there. And when I think of mixed use, that's what I think of. If we're gonna take a look at a whole neighborhood, then, and I think that's the way developers are thinking now. When we look at the Bellefontaine, she's thinking, well, I want this neighborhood concept. I want people to be able to walk to the grocery store, and that if their family comes, they can stay at a little cottage that they can rent. And my kids can walk to the park, and there'll also be a bus stop because there's going to be some apartments. And so now we can have a bus stop because now there's enough density to have that facility. And I think that that's what people want. And it certainly would make it easier for us to say, yes, this fits appropriately within this neighborhood. If we're looking at the neighborhood as a chunk and saying, this is mixed use, and mixed use residential 1 or whatever could have this amount of, this percentage of high density housing, and this percentage of single family housing, and this percentage of commercial use. one institution needs to have a park, something like that, some broader categories where you can look at a whole chunk of the map and say that's what's appropriate for this land based on its slope and its position to a highway and its drainage and the neighborhoods and development around it and its agricultural setting. And I would hope that the new way to zone would be less piecemeal and would make sense to anybody looking at the map, what they might expect in their area to happen. That's what
Thank you, Gretchen. Okay, Kurt Paulson, then Randy Bruce.
Yeah, so I agree with Abby. Just wanted to say that we don't need a 10,000 square foot lot size. And just, you know, even if we reduce the lot sizes in North Lake or Stonefield to 5,000 square feet, the restrictive covenants that those neighborhoods already have would not allow any change in those land uses. And then to Randy's other point, you know, I participated a lot in the zoning debate in Madison recently, and just for your benefit, they really identified that there's certain neighborhoods that they want residential, and there's certain areas they just want commercial. But when they say mixed use, they do require that first floor to be office or retail. And they were really concerned about residential only buildings in mixed use districts because they were worried that piece by piece, you know, they would lose some of that neighborhood scale retail that people really want, like a coffee shop or maybe a small grocery store. So I would just urge again that we think about, you know, maybe along Parmenter Street, that's a good place where we want mixed use, but maybe along certain parts of, well, I mean, different parts of the city, we might want mostly just office or retail. So I guess, Mark, just to repeat, you know, ask them why they exclude that category, or if they envision that mixed use means you could do a residential only building, you could do an office only building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Randy?
Yeah, I wanted to second the opinion on the downzoning of the single family lots. I don't think that seems appropriate. I think having a 10,000 square foot minimum doesn't make sense. Just in responding a little bit to Kurt as well here, you know, Madison has been, you know, has ways of allowing for more residential and less commercial. They've had to adapt their zoning code to allow for that. And I think giving ourselves the most flexibility, I think will be important. I do agree with you, Kurt. We don't want to lose the ability to have, you know, neighborhood commercial, but I don't think we want to have, for instance, necessarily have commercial on the entire University Avenue frontage or corridor, you know, on the first floor. I don't know that we can support that. Certainly, there's going to be corners that we'd want to. It would have been nice to have had, you know, commercial on the was it Pheasant Branch Conservancy project that just came through off a Century there, and that would have been nice to had a piece of commercial in it. But I think if we try to force too much commercial, we will be thwarting redevelopment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Randy. So Mark, I think you have enough input. So if anybody wants to provide more input, please send it to Mark. So we're going to move on to item number 10, which is set a public hearing date 1/11/22 for a resolution petitioning the Wisconsin Secretary of Transportation for airport improvement aid. Mark, you want to give a brief comment and then we make a, yeah, this is, okay, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so this is before you because the requirement is for the Plan Commission to review the record of the public hearing for this type of petition. As you probably have all heard, there's been a lot of debate, discussion about fuel, type of fuel at the airport. And there's some interest and initiative by the Airport Commission and Common Council to develop a tank for unleaded fuel. And so we are wishing to have federal funding assistance and or state funding assistance. In order to tap into that assistance, we need to have this formal petition to the state, and that petition has to be reviewed by the Plan Commission. So that's why we're proposing that the Plan Commission hold the hearing as has been done in the past.
Thank you, Mark. And it is very important. So I make a motion to schedule a hearing of for January 11th, 2020 at 7 p.m. for the to petition the Wisconsin Secretary of Transportation for airport improvements aid. Need a second.
Schaefer seconds.
Okay, any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Need a motion. Well, wish you all happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and wonderful New Year. So we're going to be heading to the West Coast tomorrow at 6. So need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Need a second.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion to adjourn say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? We're
Have a
adjourned.
good flight in the morning, Mayor.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays, everybody.
Happy
Yeah,
holidays.
next
Happy New Year.
Happy
See you in
holidays and wonderful
January.
evening.
I hear there's a snowstorm in San Francisco. But have a good holiday.
Good job.